am I? Oh, you got
Boom.
it.
Hit it. Live. Let's go to the socials.
Go to the socials. We wait for it to go live. All right.
I'm on LinkedIn. Where are you, LinkedIn?
Interesting. I wonder if LinkedIn Live is just going to start. Oh, yep. That's exactly what it did.
Got it. We're looking good on LinkedIn.
Yep, we're on LinkedIn. Are we up on YouTube?
We've already got comments.
Mm.
Checking the YouTubes.
What do you mean, Jeff? This is festive. Not terrifying. Festive is the word you're looking for. Same letter as fun. And if you said fun and festive, it would have really tied that together well.
Live on the YouTubes.
So Lauren asked if this is a behind the scenes skit. Oh, look at that. This is just actually what happens normally as we're prepping to go on the show. We play with Snap Camera. This episode's brought to you by Snap Camera, I believe. And I'm also pretty sure, Lauren, you're the one that taught me about Snap Camera. So I apologize to the Labs Live team. Or you should apologize to the Labs Live team, I mean. Did I build the snowman myself? I did. I'm freezing. Very cold. All right, we'll give some folks a couple more minutes to join in. And we'll kind of kick the show off and maybe get rid of my Santa face, or not Santa face, snowman face. We had Santa face as well. We've had several different makeups here as we get going.
These snap faces, whatever you call them, they're impressive.
They really do. They really do a nice job. Should I throw another one on as we're waiting to kind of get going here?
You should show them the elf.
The elf? Chrissy, you really want to be terrified. Here it comes.
It's too much.
Just going to leave this here.
Do you have the elf voice too?
Hey, Toby, move from the chair. Move slightly. There we go.
Say hi to your fellow.
Hey, buddy. Hey, Ed.
All right, let's give people like one more minute.
One more minute? All right.
Get
You're the
rolling.
boss. You are executive producer, so you call the shots today. I don't. All right. They can maybe get rid of this elf face here. All right, we'll do one more. We'll wrap this thing up, and then we'll get going. This looks like a happy draft from the zoo. All right.
Let's just kick it off. Let's go.
Oh.
Let's
Okay.
do it.
All right. Let me switch back to the main camera here. There we go. There we go. That's a good one. Let me turn off Snap Camera so my computer doesn't launch to the moon. All right. Ah, yes, the rare snow giraffe. That's right. It's very true. All right. Welcome, everybody, to Labs Live. This is our 2020. Yeah, it's the same thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
2020 year in review. We did a lot of episodes this year for Labs Live, for Friday 15, and even our hotly contested brackets, which were a lot of fun. I think we did 13 Labs Live episodes in all, and then maybe 10 Friday 15s and 6 brackets, something along those lines. Jacqueline will probably tell me if I'm right or not. I think what we'll do, let's start off by introducing everybody that's on the show today. The goal is a little pull the curtains back, behind the scenes, casual, and this is the actual team that puts on Labs Live. So you already know myself and Toby, I will assume, and if you've tuned into some of the other Friday 15 streams or brackets, you know Dave, our executive producer. But two folks you may not know on the social is Diana. So all of our posts that go out to promote this many times in the comments to get conversations going. That's where Diana lives. And then Jacqueline, who is the person that makes this all possible from a logistics standpoint, make sure we have things buttoned up, scheduled. I was explaining this to somebody the other day. In a lot of ways, the show goes somewhat seamless. I mean, as much as a live broadcast would, and it feels relatively natural. The reason for that is all of the prep that goes into it. You have to prep a lot to be natural, if that makes sense. And Jacqueline is the cornerstone of all of that prep. So we thought it would be fun to welcome everybody on the show. Dave, you want to bring everybody else in so we're not just focused on me, and kind of have a conversation about the year, and then a little bit about Labs Live in general. And I think before we get into kind of the reflection on Labs Live, why we did it and whatnot, let's focus on kicking off what this year represented. And before we get into that, I will say one of the things that we want to get better at is comments, engaging with the comments, encouraging folks to post in the comments. So if you have something, question for us, anything, bring back the candy corn. We'll see. Throw it in there. We're going to get better at paying attention to those, encouraging those, answering those. Anyways, Jeff, candy corn. I don't know about that. So let's kind of kick it off. I think the first episode that comes to mind, we did, I don't know, 3 episodes about representation in tech. And the first one I want to kick off is the Black Tech Experience. And Toby, I'm going to kick it to you because one of my questions is that's the episode you hosted.
Yeah.
It was the episode that Dave figured out how to crop an angle when we were still shooting this at the office. So that way we could crop me out of the episode. How did that feel hosting?
Yeah, for me, like it just felt natural. It didn't feel different because you were still there, and hosting with Nikki Evelyn, it was just like a very casual, natural conversation that we would have any other day. And also it's like that particular episode and all the episodes we do, like, is very close to my heart because I'm Black and I'm in tech. So it's like talking about myself and talking about my experience and learning from Nikki and her experience and what she does in the community, sharing experiences about like imposter syndrome and like what we do to continue to like improve the Black tech experience. So it was just like it didn't feel like a show or an episode, at least from my perspective. It just felt like having a conversation that we've always been having, and it was such a pleasure to be able to do that with Nikki. She's done a lot in Detroit tech scene, and just that episode was great. It was great for me, reflection wise.
Yeah. Big thank you to Nikki for being on that show.
Oh yeah,
and all the guests throughout the year. We've had some really incredible guests.
Yeah, that felt like a very natural conversation that you and Nikki probably would have had no matter what.
Oh yeah,
had it on camera, which in a large part was the goal of this whole thing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just the difference was that we were live streaming that, and it's just like the conversations we have, the conversation we would have, and the conversation we want people to have, and even kind of like towards the end, even promoting the community. I remember that was during the time the Hacking with the Homies conference was going to come up too. And just having that. And I think that was like the last like big thing pre-pandemic times. And then we went remote, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I mean, our first remote one was Women in Tech.
Yeah, and I was going to say about the Black Tech Experience, that was like the first one where we moved to a new permanent location that we got to use once before we started working from home. And yeah,
there's a lot of effort to get that permanent location set up to use one time, getting the lighting right. And
you talked a little bit about the technological advancements we made and being able to crop, but like the whole show I felt like took a leap forward for that episode in terms of lighting, equipment, setup, Just all of it came together, and then it's been collecting dust ever since. We left like a week after.
I mean, speaking of our first remote episode, it falls under experiences in tech. I think the one that resonated really, like I really, really enjoyed watching. I mean, I enjoyed all of them, but this one really resonated because it was the Women in Tech episode, and Erica and Chrissy were hosting that one. And then they talked about their experiences when they were new in tech. I'm new in tech, and hearing them share the challenges they faced, talking about imposter syndrome. They talked about having a family and building a career, and they just they shared how women in labs are like an increasing number. So that was really great to hear.
Yeah, and that was one of those shows that unfortunately we put off for a little while because we didn't know a couple of things that we didn't know when we transitioned to home. There was the technology piece of it, right? Like we were using in-person technology, something that, we were using Wirecast. It was running off a computer that was, hooked up to an audio mixer. And so trying to figure out, okay, well, what solutions do we have at our disposal to use remote? I mean, that was step one. And also, as we did transition to remote, when was it a good time to talk about things, right? And for most of the month of March, there's so much that was in the air, confusion, schools closing, kids coming home, all these other different things. So there was a balance that we worked tirelessly on to try to figure out, okay, well, when does it make sense to start broadcasting again? It felt like that was a good episode to kind of kick things back together.
Yeah.
Even the Parents in Tech episode, not trying to jump ahead too far, but I don't know if we would have done that episode if we were still working in the office necessarily. Like that just became such a relevant topic once we started working from home that I feel like we couldn't really not talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I don't know how many team members turned into teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Help us. Teachers after everyone transitioned to home, and I think it was great to highlight that not everyone's alone when it comes to that, and alone when it comes to how difficult that is.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about I'm actually glad we hit on the Parents in Tech, and as I mentioned, like that was kind of like the kickoff point of us being comfortable again doing some of these streams remote. And then that I'm not going to necessarily go in chronological order here, and we can talk about that the technology transition a little bit later and how we approach that. But there's a couple other things that come into play too. We talked about a couple different roles. So I think we had a couple episodes about design, leveling up design and growing a design team, design sprints. The QA team came on to talk about the role of QA. I thought that was you all may have certain I think one of the great things about the QA one was that was an idea brought by our team members.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I remember that. Mm-hmm.
Jonathan and Katrina posted that in our Labs Live Slack channel. We have an idea for an episode. It was great. They did a ton of work on their end to prepare for that episode. So bravo. And I thought it was great because that's kind of a oftentimes too behind the scenes role, and so it created some good dialogue.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that as well. That was one of the good things. Like having an episode completely just focus on our quality assurance was great, because sometimes people have a lot of misconceptions of what the role does, what it entails, and just having that even from a sales perspective to be able to have materials in the future to send to kind of explain this is what our QA process looks like. This is why we do QA the way we do it. It was just really nice to have that. That was really good. So shout out to Katrina and John.
Rock is very right. The QA episode was fantastic. There's a lot of great information, a lot of great energy.
Whoever had design sprint, right, with Ryan.
Yeah, that was our first episode of the year.
Yep.
Wow, it feels like 20 years ago.
It really does.
It for that episode, just kind of building on what we were just talking about. I think what I appreciated most about that was that the format of Labs Live allows us to talk about services that we offer, like the design sprint, but in a way that is conversational and personal. And those are ways that, like, let's say a design sprint web page on our website, or anybody's website for that matter, doesn't ever really do. And like Toby said, it becomes an excellent sales tool, and just way for people to get familiar with a service, whether it's us or somebody else doing it.
Mhm.
And it shows the people side of our business too, and the expertise, and people behind those services at our company.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, bouncing off of what you said, Dave, like, I mean, even from a social perspective, Labs Live has given us this opportunity to talk about our services in like a very candid, conversational way. Like you said, it's allowed us to show the people side of our business, bring them on to talk about it. We've also had opportunities to bring on industry experts. And for like social, it's been great to have access to these on hand, because it's almost like a content catalog for us. And I think that was like initially the goal with Labs Live, was to be able to create this consistent stream of content that's coming in for us.
Yeah. And along the same lines as well, I think when we kind of transitioned to fully remote, we began to also have content, not just like to talk about our services, but like to talk about things that have worked for us. When we talked about like remote hiring and scaling teams, when we talked about onboarding employees like remotely, everybody in the industry was having the same problems. Like, how do we scale teams now that everybody's working from home? How do you onboard a new employee that you hired and you're in Cali and they're in Wisconsin? Like, how do you do that logistics? And we have Karen and Jackie, and also Christopher came, and Shannon, and they kind of touch on the same things. Like in 2020, which feels like 10 years in one, this is like how you scale your team. This is how you onboard your team. This is how you get feedback to see if remote onboarding is going well. And just having content like that, some of it, of course, would benefit because like we're experts to some extent, we're experts in the field. But sometimes too, it's just like people just watching to learn. There might be a manager somewhere like that may not even work with labs, and so like, oh, remote onboarding tips. Oh, now I can do this differently. And just having that out there this year was just, it was very relevant. It was not, I feel like those episodes were not random. They were very timely. Everybody needed them, and I'm glad that we got a chance to do that.
Yeah, I think you know, you both hit the nail on the head there. The goal of Labs Live was faster content creation. You know, recorded video takes time, and it has an expectation that it's good. Live video allows you to mess up, and no one really cares. You kind of get a pass at that. You know, too bad, I suppose. And for us, we wanted to, you know, certainly our content promotes our services, right? We are a business at the end of the day, but we wanted to be able to promote it in a more covert manner. So, you know, on site, you know, big part of our business of integrating team members inside of other companies, right? Companies went on a hiring freeze earlier in the year, but then that started to thaw. And so we know one thing to enable our on-site business is by, you know, maybe highlighting some of the challenges companies have and some of the things that we've learned how to overcome those. And that's really where the scaling and the remote hiring comes into play. So whether you need our services or not, the goal there is that you walked away with maybe a couple tidbits that you could use within your team. Maybe at some point you do need help scaling that team, and you do need help with remote onboarding. And certainly we can be there to help you with that and engage you with that. But at the end of the day, we want you to be able to kind of walk away with something independent of you know what we sell. and Dave talked about it earlier. It is also a really great opportunity to highlight our team members. I want to kind of reiterate that a lot of this stuff, a lot of the things we talk about, it's built off of outlines that our team have put together. So when Shannon and Chris came on, I mean, if you know them, you can only assume that the detailed outline that they provided for what they wanted to talk about was extensive. Looking at you, Shannon, and it was long, and so going through that, and it was great to see that they had that passion and what they wanted to talk about, and so then it becomes much more than selling, much more than just highlighting services. It's showcasing team members, which is great.
Yeah. So shifting gears a little bit, this might be for you, Dan and Jacqueline mostly, and maybe Dave as well, and Diana. We had some external guests this year for the first time. I know you, Jacqueline, did a lot of the logistics about that. How was that for you?
I mean, we got a lot of practice with our internal guests, so I feel like that helps. With external guests, I feel like I just wanted, in general, you want like all of your guests to be comfortable, but particularly those who are not as familiar with how we work at Detroit Labs. So just like being intentional with communication and prep time to make sure that they're comfortable enough to have a casual conversation, kind of like what Dan was saying at the beginning of this episode here, is to have a casual conversation. Like you have to have a certain amount of prep time to make people feel comfortable and just be intentional with that. Even working remotely now, all of your communication, in my opinion, has to be so much more intentional than it had to be before. Whereas when we prepared for the episodes in the office, we had some process, but it was also, let's run over to Ryan's desk. We have a question about something, or like you could do that, but now it's like you have to be more intentional with schedules, and so a lot more to coordinate, and external guests have busy schedules.
I was just going to say, leading up to pretty much every external guest. So normally I mute Slack probably about 15 minutes before we go live. And I had to learn during the external guest one to leave that unmuted until right when we go live, as Jacqueline and I are talking back and forth. And she's, did they show up? Did they show up? Did they show up?
Yeah.
And we're used to waiting for Toby last minute.
Oh, wow.
Which is a repeat occurrence every single episode.
You mean
but it's definitely something different when it's an external guest. But Jacqueline, I was thinking about this last night. Maybe external guests showing up a little bit more last minute is a testament to the amount of prep and comfort that we have provided them through the process.
That's a great way to look at it. That's a silver lining for sure.
But I think the interesting thing is, and another thing we were talking about yesterday, I'm not sure we would have had external guests if it wasn't for this transition to go remote.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this enabled us and gave us the access to be able to bring on, guests that maybe it would have been difficult to get them into our space in a timely manner. You want to talk about a timely manner then, they probably would have been walking right off the elevator onto the set. And so, that's another silver lining of this experience and doing this all remote. Access has been, far higher.
Mm-hmm.
Was it different for you, Dan, hosting with internal guests versus like external guests? Was it different? The experience different?
Oh my goodness, yes. So I'd be lying if I said it was just an easy breeze, just another person type scenario. When it comes to internal guests, I always want to make them shine as much as possible. I want to be like here for them, and yet I know the internal guests, so I know they'll give me grace if I screw up. And I don't always know that with external guests, and so it was very nerve-wracking going into each. I mean, obviously the first one with Eric was we had Eric Risto on from Lineage Logistics. That certainly was nerve-wracking because that was the first external guest. So I was watching that countdown timer, saying, "Okay, just keep going. This is going well. Let's get through this, and then exhale afterwards." But I knew Eric already, so that helped. Um, I think the one that I might have been most nervous for, though, was Orchid Bertelson joined us from Nestle. That happened out of a connection on LinkedIn, actually. She saw all of our content on LinkedIn, which LinkedIn is something we'll talk about here in a little bit. And she connected with us and then had her on as a guest. That one was nerve wracking because I met Orchid a week before we came on Labs Live, so I wanted to make sure that Detroit Labs was represented well when it comes to that. Had Bob Walters on, and COO and president of Quicken Loans Rocket Mortgage. That was great. Toby, I know you're a big fan of Bob's, and you were very excited about the future of lending.
Mm-hmm. Like that was a great episode, and like just hearing like Bob. Obviously, like Bob is someone that is like passionate about what he does, and he knows a lot of stuff. So like just that episode, he's just like firing. It was just a lot of fun. I think that's probably maybe second or third time talking with him, and just like the same passion, trying to like just the future of lending and how to make it better. And yeah, it was just very like I learned a lot. I think there's a common theme with a lot of these episodes that I know like Dan, you do a lot of prep as well, and I do prep, but I also like open my mind to like I'm going into the episode to just like learn a lot and ask a lot of just curious questions. And that episode, like a lot of the things were new to me because the mortgage industry, of course I love it, but like there's a lot of things I don't know. And you're just like going in and like I go like we're doing a show, but it's like just a learning experience even from like the interviewer perspective. So I really enjoyed those a lot.
Well, you hit on something that's probably worth if we're pulling the curtain back more here. You talked about I'm prepping, and then you talk about you're learning and you're listening and you're asking questions. Intentionally, Toby and I play a role when it comes to these shows, right? My job is to make sure we have an outline and we're moving through that outline. And if we steer off, that's okay, but we'll bring it back and end in a timely manner. Unless it's Friday 15 or brackets, then we end when we end because we have fun doing those. And then Toby's role though is to build off of what the guest says. So the things that we don't know the guest is going to say, that's Toby's opportunity to really dive in. And if you go back to the previous episodes, the most thought-provoking questions certainly come from Toby. Those aren't planned, and those are questions that he learns and comes up with as we go. Anything that you hear from me is likely somewhat planned inside of a structure, I should say. So most everything's ad-libbed, but inside of a structure. So it was a good point. I didn't really plan on talking about that, but yeah, there's very much taking on roles to make sure that conversation is natural. You don't want just to go through a script.
Yeah, I'm like a free bird on the show, just a free bird.
You can always see like the light bulb kind of light up right before Toby's about to ask one of his questions, and I'm like, I know he's curious about this.
Is that the light bulb or the various light coming in and out of his window at his old setup, or the cam link flickering blue?
Yeah, his camera stutter.
Yeah.
We also like wanted talking about like equipment and all of that. I know we wanted to make some time for reflection about how much progress we've made. I can remember even just thinking back my setup before that, and even when we went remote, it was easy to have a setup when we were in the office because like I just come in, we have the camera and all of that. But like when we moved home, you had to have the equipment, you had to have the background, you have to have the lighting, you have to have all these things. Dave, this is probably for you because you're the Zen when it comes to like equipment. What are like some things that like people watching now, like just sharing our process and like the upgrades we've made, and just even audio, LinkedIn, and all those things?
What can we share, or what?
Yeah, like what are like some improvements? I know for sure one for me is like my background has changed. Right? Yeah, I put stuff on my wall. I have Elfie here today. Like the game has changed. Like that is just like from a few months. So even audio, Dave, you have a new microphone that you sound like a radio host now.
Oh, do I? Oh, great. Welcome to 97.1 The Labs. So both Dan and I have gone through extensive equipment upgrades. Even before this, I think like Dan, I don't think I'm speaking for you here necessarily in saying like we enjoy all these things, so we're doing it anyways. But what I want to give a piece of advice here for anybody trying to do this or just have a better setup at home. Light is where you start, I think, with your MacBook camera or the cheap webcam you have, or your phone or whatever you're using. Like just a little bit of light goes a long way. And you don't, like Dan and I, you can't see here, but we have like these panel lights behind our computer shining on us, and that's why our picture looks so good. But you can buy $15 ring lights off Amazon. You can.
Paul's calling me out here for a minute, Dave. It's 100% accurate.
Yeah, heck yeah. It's piling up. Boxes are like all around the room.
Settle down. You'll tell Will.
You can take the lampshade off a lamp and get more light. Open your windows, stuff like that. But definitely play around with that because it goes a long, long way.
Yeah.
And then you can start to spend money like exponentially. So watch out.
It adds up quickly. I mean, Toby actually has a somewhat similar setup now. And so Toby acquired the Labs Live equipment from the office. So he's got his Sony set up there. Dave, you have a Sony. I have a Fuji. All running through capture cards. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny that we spent a lot of time and effort just to get the office set up correct. With the camera, the specific angles that we wanted, the lighting. We had to buy lights for the office. Dave, what were the mics we got? We had the Shure, the really good ones.
Sure, 7.
They sure were good, but they worked. They worked really well into a little audio mixer. Then we head home and trying to have that same quality. So you'd be surprised how far a USB mic goes. That's all we're using at home right now. These happen to be the Yeti X's, but I think Toby uses standard Blue Yeti.
Yep.
Not the most expensive things in the world. They do great for audio. Lights, again, don't need anything too massive. Dave, I like that you're always LinkedIn user through the tool, but like I see on LinkedIn that you're David Clawwitter. So
For
LinkedIn user.
For Jacqueline and Diane, I'm curious. For us, it was mostly like equipment changes. Like when we switched to this setup versus the office, which I'll ask Dan later if we ever go back to that. How did that change? Like besides logistics with SNL Guest, of course, did that change your own process with like social media? Did that change your process, Jacqueline, with logistics, or was it just the same?
Who goes first? Go ahead, Jacqueline.
I feel like a lot of it was the same. More intentional preparation time, I guess, was a big thing. I was thinking about physical setup at the office. Like I feel like it was Claw and I down there. We're going live at, I think it was 3:00 on Thursdays. So we would go down there an hour or two before and set up like the physical space. I was thinking that I kind of missed that. I missed like the energy of being in the office and doing that together and just like hanging out and waiting and troubleshooting and getting a little stressed out when the mics weren't working and things I don't know. So there was something to that. I feel like that I miss a little with being at home, although there are so many pros with being at home and being able to meet with so many more people and things we wouldn't have been able to do necessarily at the office. So
I do miss that energy that you were mentioning, like being in the office, like sitting on the bleachers or just like messing around. You've been like the test subject in front of the camera, like for every show, probably.
Yeah, testing the mics. Yeah.
And, from a social end, I mean, since I started at Labs and like promoting Labs Live, I mean, the way we promote the show has just evolved. But I think it's it's kind of improved. It's definitely challenged our ability to get creative with promoting the show. We joined LinkedIn Live, so that was like a different hub that we were directing people to, but also just thinking of like different ways to involve the people on the show when we're promoting the show was exciting. From like getting videos from them, or like, oh, we need photos. Well, we can't get professional photos like we used to in the office, so take something on your webcam real quick and let it be candid. And I think that's been fun, just exercising our ability to be creative with this.
I rewatched the apprenticeship episode or part of it within the past couple of days, and I noticed that we used Instagram stories to capture questions for that too. So I feel like seeing how we've evolved our social strategy has been interesting, and LinkedIn events didn't exist at the beginning of the year either. So just more tools have become available this year in particular, I feel like, especially with being remote and stuff.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think, a lot of this is trial and error. See what works, see what doesn't. We talk about LinkedIn. So in the first season, which would have been our 2019 season, we didn't have LinkedIn. LinkedIn Live was just getting going. We weren't in part of that beta. We decided at the beginning of this year to apply for the beta. We had to state reasons why we thought we would be good participants and what our shows would be, our content, give them examples of our content. And we were already streaming on YouTube, so it was good. We had something to point to there. And we were fortunate to get access to the beta program. And that was exciting because it does feel like LinkedIn is one of the better, places for us for our content, at least, right? And I think we saw a big jump right away in going live on LinkedIn. But then, YouTube's kind of balanced back out, so they've almost been spot on even over the last probably like 5 episodes, which has been encouraging. But I think embracing LinkedIn Live had its own challenges, with Dave and I spending a lot of time trying to figure out how it works. So it's very much a beta service to those that are looking to get into it. And it's all API driven. So there's no real interface on LinkedIn for going live like there is on YouTube, or Dave, you stream on Twitch. I can only assume that there's an interface that you can work with there. With LinkedIn, you have to get a tool, and all features are accessed via an API. So you don't always know when features are available. You don't always know what the roadmap is. And we ended up stumbling across, there's a list of like 6 or 7 tools, Dave. And we settled on StreamYard, which is what we're still using. It's what we started with the Women in Tech episode, and we've stuck with it since we've come home. And it's a good tool.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not overly complex. It basically gives us a tool set of the basics, right? Ways for people to communicate with us, ways for us to incorporate those into the stream, and just a few little like visual tools to help us spruce the stream up. It's really all you need.
It's funny how excited you get. So StreamYard, we love you, but it also would be nice if we knew what your roadmap was and got an email when you had something new available. Instead, we log in for the show to schedule the show that day, and boop, new feature. It's kind of nice. It's like opening a gift, but it it is a good tool. But it does take you off guard a little bit. So like when we started with LinkedIn, the only way that you could get notified of a stream is being on LinkedIn at the specific time of the stream. You couldn't send a link. Couldn't send a link or anything like that ahead of time, so you had to be ready. Then I don't know, about halfway through the year, LinkedIn events were enabled, where you could send out an event, but the person had RSVP for it. Great from a business standpoint because we see who's coming to the show, and that's fantastic. But it's a slight hurdle. We're not Harvard Business Review. We're honest with ourselves. And then we just found out today. So we had inquired about getting a link, scheduling essentially. That's what YouTube allows you to schedule. So you can send a link out ahead of time. LinkedIn didn't allow that until today when Dave logged in to schedule this show, and it popped up and said, you can now schedule LinkedIn. So surprise. So that is actually that's been one of those challenges that we've dealt with throughout the year. It's like, well, we want to send somebody like we get some of the best engagement on LinkedIn. We want to give them a link so they can they know when we go live. So nice to have that feature now.
For the majority part of promoting on LinkedIn, I think that's what like we struggled with when we were promoting, is like, where do we drive people? Like, it's on LinkedIn Live, like, what are we going to tell them? Follow us and like turn on your notifications. And so having this link has been like, I'm so excited about it. Yeah.
It's the little things, isn't it?
Yes.
And then like not to shift gears a little bit, we've kind of touched a little bit about like some of the things some of the challenges, the things we've learned. Just wanted to make space too for like just sharing other most specific things that we've learned from like live streaming now, both like in person and then online. I know for me, like we touched a little bit, for example, when you're having a show like with guests, one thing I know that is very helpful for me is like, of course, prepping and studying like before and knowing what to about the general subject and whoever you're talking with. But one thing that has been very useful for me is just to always like even just have the mindset that like, oh, I don't know if it happened in the first few episodes, but to not think of it as like this big event, like this big live streaming thing. Because it's just walking like, oh, I want to have a conversation. And that's always the mindset that I have. And so like I never really think about it as like, oh, live streaming and doing this, was mainly like, oh, I want to talk to this person and I'm curious about this and this and this and this. And I think for me, that's something that I've learned from doing this. Maybe like after the first few episodes, I think the very first time is like, oh, you're going live. But then I just stopped thinking about that and more thinking about like the topics and what I want to learn. And that for me has been like one of the best things, like best takeaways for me, at least.
I was thinking about that today even, because like having this conversation is like the same way I have conversations in any other meeting. It looks the same sitting at my computer like I always do. But if we were at the office, I feel like I would be even more nervous because it's like there's a camera staring at you and there are more people around. It just like feels like more of a production. Whereas when you're at home, it feels like any old meeting. It just happens to be live. Yeah. So I feel like that's been helpful for today for me.
Well, I think that's been the feedback we get all the time is it feels like you're on a Meet or a Zoom or something like that. So it's a little bit easier. Sorry, Diane, I cut you off.
No, I was going to say the same exact thing. Yeah. Like right on. It just feels like another Google Hangout or Meet, and we're just talking to each other. Yeah.
So Jeff commented that Harvard Business Review shade. So I wanted to be clear about that. I was saying we are not, as in they get thousands and thousands of live views when they do it on LinkedIn. So that was actually me giving praise. And I brought that up because I watched a couple of theirs earlier in the year. RSVP to their LinkedIn event and then watched it. And I mean, it's unbelievable how many views they get. The amount of interaction in their comments is just wild. I mean, you can't even keep it. It's so fast, you can't even pick any one of them out of there. They can't even moderate that. And so when you look at that, you definitely question your own show, and you're like, well, wait, why don't I get that many views? Why don't we have that much interaction? All these different things, right? And I think one of the things with doing these live streams that's extremely difficult is, you spend a lot of time on content ideas. You don't really know if that's going to be relevant or not. You don't really know if people are going to care about that. When you go live, that is pretty much immediate feedback on whether people want to hear what you're going to say. So we had, I can still remember we had a couple shows where it was inching up, 10, 15, 20 concurrent live viewers, then 30. And it was like, oh man, we're really turning that corner and starting to increase. And then I don't remember which one it was. It was a Friday 15 probably. Thank you, J.R. Smith, for enjoying Friday 15. We did like those. They may still come back. But we were doing one, and I think it was Toby and I talking. I don't know if Dave, you might not have been in that one. And there was 5 viewers the entire time. And I was on Slack with Jacqueline, I mean, I was complaining, and it was clear what was happening, and I was complaining because my feelings were hurt. I was like, "Oh, this is a bummer." You put in all this effort, and no one's watching. But it was in a lot of ways, it was a good humbling experience, and it reminded me of what even starting up Detroit Labs was like. You get this momentum, and every once in a while, it's gonna take you down a peg, and it did. But I will say after that, pretty consistently around 50-ish, anywhere between 40 and 50-ish viewers, and live on repeat, we end up with over 400 views almost consistently. It's always hard to say. Analytics aren't great on this platform that we like. But live is more spontaneous. Live's actually fun and has a lot of energy. I will say that it's a blast.
And the cool thing about the content is that it lives. It's if people don't tune in to the live stream, like, that's okay. They can always watch it later. Like you said, like, we still get views after it's up.
Yeah. And a lot of this is just, you have to look at that as value as well as the live. So, just plugging away at it, making sure your feelings don't get hurt when things don't go the exact way you want it. But it's, it has very much been fun. And I mean, just even leading up to it. This is, by the way, not my way of saying we're not doing this anymore. I just started realizing the tone of that was almost like I was going to tell Toby goodbye. And that it was him and his elf were going to be hosting. Does it have a name, Toby? Did you just call it Elfie?
Elfie. Elfie on the shelf.
No effort in that name.
How creative.
Do we ever put out a survey for new topics, content to address on Labs Live? So we get ideas from our team members. They jump into Slack all the time, and we actually take those ideas and turn those into shows. QA came out of that. I think remote onboarding might have. I know scaling came out of that. So those were all different topics that were brought up to us. We don't have all the ideas. So that's been good. I think one of the things we've been kind of toying around with is how much to interact on social. Ask for comment or for content ideas, and it's something that we're thinking about in 2021. Do we start doing posts to ask people what type of content they want to hear? I think part of it's making sure that we're talking about the content that we can confidently talk about, and making sure we're not. I mean, I could talk about sneakers all day, but it probably doesn't make sense for Detroit Labs to be talking about sneakers, or Toby or Elfie or so it's all about making sure that whatever content that we talk about is relevant to what we do. All right. Well, it's 48 minutes. And to those that have stayed viewing, thank you. It's pretty consistent today. I will say one thing. Early on, I was bummed about views, and I was bummed about what the percentage of viewers were just, Detroit Labs folks. Derek Quinn is a team member, Detroit Labs, video background. He was giving us some tips one day, and I asked him that question. I'm like, hey, this is great that Detroit Labs team members are viewing this content. It warms my heart. But I know one of our goals is to get this out in front of everybody. So should we view that, if an episode's 95% Detroit Labs and 100% Detroit Labs in the comments, should we view that as a failure? I was just getting his opinion on it. And he said, is there anything negative about Detroit Labs team members talking about things that they're passionate about in the public? And it kind of made me think about that a little bit, right? And I was like, you know what? You're right. There's nothing wrong with us talking about all of this in the public, and in a lot of ways, it has a ton of value. So I don't know if Derek knows that I remember that every single time, but almost every episode I think about that, and in a lot of ways, that's where Friday 15 came from, and even our silly brackets, which I think we'll kind of wrap up by mentioning that we had like 6 brackets. We had cereal, snacks, ice cream.
Candy corn.
Well, those brackets and those brackets really kind of came from this idea that having Detroit Labs team members having conversations in the public is a good thing. And so those don't have business value necessarily, right? There's not a 1-to-1 ratio on business value there, but man, they were fun. Still are fun. We're gonna figure out another one to bring back at some point. The last one was Halloween candy, and that went really well with a guest Jay Farner on there. So
I had tears in my eyes watching that bracket. I was laughing so hard.
was that because Toby giggled the entire one?
Literally, that was like Toby was just like in shambles the entire episode, and it was just hilarious.
Joe Exotic was next level. Will was
Oh my God.
something else.
Elise showed up in the comments. We should mention something. We'd be remiss if is it the word remiss? Remiss.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know the word. I think it makes sense in that setting, but I'm not always 100% sure. So sometimes I just go. Yeah. So sometimes when I'm writing on a whiteboard and I don't know how to spell something, I just wiggle it out too.
Now the secret's out. So
Yeah, well, it's all right. So Elise just commented, miss you all. So I should mention that Elise was a big part of this show starting in 2019, encouraging us to get this thing up and running, encouraging us that we can do it, having energy behind the scenes when we were physically there. And so I think you used it correctly. I will defer to Jacqueline. I think Jacqueline nodded. So
I feel a lot of pressure right now, but
well, I'm gonna be honest. When I said it, I looked right at you to see if I got it. But yeah, so thank you, Elise. A big part of this the show as well. So that said, going into 2021, we're gonna have more fun. We'll bring some brackets back here and there. We hope we have more content coming up that you all find enjoyable, interesting, worthwhile. We'll probably have some more external guests. When we do ever go back to the office, I think we'll still keep some sort of this remote process going on because it does allow us to welcome new guests. We're going to get better at the comments, asking for people to comment, asking for questions, answering them timely to make sure that you continue to post in there. And then I think we'll keep this thing running. It's fun.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's been a fun year.
All things considered, right, Toby?
Right. It's been a fun decade in 2020.
Well, you're at your new luxury vacation home with Elfie, in a bow strategically placed just above your head.
It's perfect.
Was there a thought process to that bow?
There's always a thought process about everything I do then. Always.
I like the twigs in front of your laptop, wherever those are.
Oh yeah, that is also a thought. Like everything it's a stage, Dan.
Okay, I'm giving you a lot of credit. I like the setup today.
Thank you.
It's definitely upscale.
Yeah, festive. Keep the festive spirits going. Fun and festive.
All right. Anything else to add before we wrap this up? Our last show of 2020.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed our prep. We do a lot of prep and it's just been fun doing it and just meeting, and even we go on before the show, sometimes 10 minutes before, sometimes finishing lunch and all of that. It's fun. And
we know who shows up 5-10 minutes. Let's be clear about something. Dave and I are on this thing at least an hour before, making sure things are tightened up. And Toby strolls in 5 minutes before while Dave and I are going, where is he?
So if by prep you mean snap camera, then that counts.
Busted. Yeah, you're right.
And I'm seeing Dan with trying snap camera. Yeah, but it's been fun. I really enjoy it, and I hope just looking forward to next year to seeing what we do, if we go back to the office, if we do remote. I'm glad we even did this episode. Oh, look, yeah, he's back.
There it is. Before this goes off the rail, I want to say thank you to everybody watching and anybody who catches this in syndication. Thanks for tuning in, watching through this hour-long episode, and
Mhm.
checking out our other content as well. I think there's been a lot of people who have been with us for this entire ride, seen the show grow. Really
Yeah.
cool.
Awesome.
All right, I'll switch back. I'll go back to Wilson. All right, thanks everybody. Appreciate it. Diana, Jacqueline, thanks for joining us. I don't know if you really wanted to, but appreciate
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
good sports and allowing us to go a little behind the scenes here. So, everyone have a happy holiday, a happy new year. 2021 is coming. That doesn't mean all of a sudden magically everything gets better. It's a continuation of what we're currently experiencing. But make sure you find joy in the little things. This happens to be one of the little things that brings me a lot of joy personally. I love working with this group. I love doing these live streams. They're a lot of fun. For that reason alone, we're going to keep doing them. And hopefully at the end of the day, we spread a little bit of our culture, and then maybe some opportunities to work with fun new companies, brands, partners. So thanks, everybody. We'll see you in 2021.